was born in Ibadan, Nigeria, and I grew up most of my life here. I grew up in Ibadan, except for the time that I went to high school, which I did in another city not too far from Ibadan. That's an interesting question. Because initially, I never saw myself as uh, leaving to go to another country. But after I finished high school, I wanted to pursue my education, but the opportunity was limited in Nigeria then. There were only so many universities, very few for the number of people that wants to go to college. So then I got the opportunity, I got a scholarship to come and study in the States. So that's when I took the opportunity to come. Yeah, well, education for me, it's been very important. I try working hard at school, but I grew up with my mom and dad, but unfortunately I lost my dad when I was 12 years old. So, and within my family, my mother was a housewife. She sells things on the side, but the opportunity to go to after grade school, I really didn't feel that I will have the opportunity to continue to high school, because high school in Nigeria then you have to pay. It wasn't free. Up to elementary school was free, but after elementary school, so after my elementary school, I thought maybe that was the end of education for me. But I was able to, with the help of the church that I belong, Catholic church, I was able to get a scholarship to go to high school, and that's how. And then finishing high school again, it's like, okay, well, maybe that's the end of it. That's why I worked for a few years after leaving high school until the opportunity for me to get a scholarship to come and study in US came. So it's my mother knew that I have that potential, so she's been my strongest advocate to go as high as I can, and that's why she was so willing to tell me that, son, you got the scholarship, go for it, we'll be all right. That's how I found myself here. Yeah, I ended up saying initially because of the 4-year scholarship. After I finished the initial 2 years, that I got a scholarship to continue up to my bachelor's degree. Then it was during that time, but I think by the end of the time that we got our degrees, that we got married, and then we were also expecting our first child then. So by the time I finished my first degree, I went back home, so we did some traditional stuff at home. And then coming back, I got scholarship again to do my graduate work. So after we finished the graduate work, then it's like, well, we want to go back to Nigeria. But then, as my wife said, the response we got back from people at home is things are very difficult at that time. And then plus, we already have a child. So for me, it's like, well, I don't want to go back to be a burden to them. I've tried to improve my life, and with the hope and expectation that I'll be able to help my family back. So, and I thought maybe I have that opportunity here, not to be dependent on them, but to be helpful to them by staying here, and that's what made the decision for us to decide to stay. Well, when I first came, she came maybe a couple of months before me, but even then we maintained contact. So as soon as I got to the States, I sent her a postcard. Yeah, I sent her a postcard from Minnesota. But by the time my postcard got to her, she already went back. She already went back to Nigeria. So her sister that she was living with at that time, her senior sister, saw my postcard, and she was kind enough to respond back to me to let me know that she's going to Nigeria, but that she will be coming back to go to school. So after she came back, by the time she came back, or maybe shortly before she came back, I transferred from Minnesota to New York. I guess maybe Minnesota was so cold, but she said maybe I just transferred to New York because of her. So I transferred to New York, and then I was on Long Island. She was in Brooklyn. We were close to each other then, and I started taking the train from Long Island to New York to visit her. I don't think maybe they said if you live long enough. I remember when I was in Minnesota, they said, oh, if you stay here long enough, you get used to the winter. But then going to New York, and then from New York to Illinois, all cold, cold air. It's like I never was used to the snow. So the shoveling snow and getting stuck in the snow. I wasn't used to those things. So when both of us finished our education, we said, well, where do we want to go? Let's get out the map. Which area has weather comparable to Nigeria? That it's warm most of the year. So we decided on Texas. Then when we were looking at it, we said, well, either San Antonio or Austin. But when she got a job first, it was in Corpus Christi. So a Robstown by Corpus Christi was our first destination.
Yes.
So we went there for about 4 years before moving to San Antonio. And we've been in San Antonio now for 21 years or so. What I miss most, and I tell my kids and friends too, that I've been here, is I enjoy being in US. There's a lot of opportunity, and I always tell them that, well, the price I feel I'm paying for, the price of that, it's, I miss my mom, I miss my family, I miss my friends growing up, my friends from high school, and all those are the greatest things that I miss. And I miss the country too, because a part of me, and all my time through college, I always say I want to go back to Nigeria. And not because I wasn't having good experience here, but because I believe that Nigeria is still a developing country, and I believe that my contributions, some people made America to be what it is today, and I believe that my contributions there, US has a lot of MBAs and people of my education. I believe I can be of more service there than I can over here. So that was my urge in wanting to go there and helping to contribute in any way that I can. But that was not meant to be. So those are the things that I miss most about not being. Decided actually, we had a green card, a permanent residence for quite a while before we decided to become citizen. I guess maybe partly because we still wanted to hold on to our culture and our heritage, in the sense of being a Nigerian. Um, but then it's like it got to a point that, well, we've actually lived here in the States longer than we've lived in Nigeria with all the years that we've been here. So it's like, well, this is home now. Like my wife said, God puts you where He wants you. Man proposes, God disposes. And sometimes maybe one's place of birth or one's national origin, nationality, is an accident. We find ourselves in, like, my kids now are born here and they've become American citizens because of that, because their parents were here when they were born. So it's a one world, whether it's Nigeria or US, and wherever you are, I believe that we all have contributions that each one of us can make, and God puts us here for one reason, for some reason. So then we might as well go all the way and become citizen of that great place that God has put us to be in. Yeah, well, I think no, that's one of the challenges and some kind of balance that you have to. Sometimes I tell my kids too that it's an opportunity for them. Uh, Sometimes I don't know whether they see it that way or not, because they have immigrant parents that are rooted in their culture, and the way that I like to see it is I have two cultures, as we are products of our environment. I'm a product of Nigerian and American environments. I like to believe that I'm taking what I consider the best of the cultures of in Nigeria. I'm trying to blend that with the best of the culture in America, and then trying to raise your kids that way. You have values that you have due to the influence of your culture. Then you're raising kids in a totally different culture, and that those kids, they have to go outside of your house, mix with other kids. So for them, I know it's a challenge because sometimes it's different from the way that they are brought up at home, the way that they know their parents. It's like my other friends, that's what my kids will say, my other friends' kids are allowed to do this or allowed to do that. And I try to tell them, well, your last name is Adeeko, and theirs may be a different one. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we are not, we don't raise kids as we mass produce cars or other manufactured goods. If we are all just like Toyota Corolla, all just rolled out from the same factory, maybe we all be the same. But I think it's a good thing that we are all not that way, because when there's a defect in a model of car, then all those models will have to be recalled. God forbid that we all like that there's a defect in our upbringing, then that whole generation is going to be like that. But since we all have our own set of values, that they all take out there. I advocate to them, take what you believe is the best culture of your parents and mix that with what you feel is in America. That's an opportunity. It's not an handicap. It's an opportunity for you that you should cherish. That, well, I can take some of my parents' things as well as the exposures that I have to other cultures.
Do you need to
So,
add?
yeah, so it was just one thing that came. If I don't know whether I call it regrets or maybe that's just the decision that we made then. It's bringing them up. We did talk about that. Whether we brought them up with bilingual with language,
Yeah.
teach them our language when they were little, but we decided otherwise. We decided to raise them mostly with we do speak some Nigerian language to them, but not. We didn't go out totally to teach them the language, and part of the reason was that we didn't want them to have, maybe, if you want to call it handicap, the same accent handicap that we do. That once they start speaking, it's like, oh, yeah, you're from, and because of the accent. So we just raise them with the English so that they can feel in that way. Then by the time we said, okay, let's start teaching them the language, they weren't taking it seriously. They just laugh about it, and so they never grew up with that. So that's